Some part of us knows that we are infinite in our potential. We were nomadic and wild and liberated. We didn't need cities and villages at these times. We became domesticated. So all I recommend is that you start rewilding in whatever way you feel called. That doesn't mean you need to go build a cabin in the woods by yourself and live out in nature alone. You can rewild from your cubicle. I rewilded by listening to music that liberated me while I was in my little cubicle. One ear had a headphone and the other one was paying attention. You don't have to escape the matrix in order to liberate yourself. Give yourself permission to have ecstatic experiences, because joy is what heals us. But in order to feel our joy, we have to also feel the sadness and pain that we haven't faced. Otherwise, we won't be able to be in touch with our feelings. So with being able to feel more comes all kinds of strong emotions. Our ability to navigate those emotions is where we get to know ourselves.
I'm drinking some coffee, but I have to say I'm a little bit sleepy here at the Myth Slayer Café today, because we're going to be talking about Hypnos, the god of sleep and dreaming. We have not discussed Hypnos yet on this show, but man, is that a good subject for us to really deep dive in and explore. I have with me Joel Schafer, who is going to take us to a whole new level of understanding about Hypnos and what that means for your life. Now, for those of you who don't know about Hypnos, obviously his name is the basis for the modern term hypnosis. As mentioned a few minutes ago, Hypnos was the Greek god of sleep and dreaming. In fact, Hypnos' sons literally were the dreams. Hypnos was the child of the primordial Greek deities, night and darkness. Makes sense because of the realm in which Hypnos dwells. It's important for us to begin by thinking about darkness as the realm of sleep. Hypnos doesn't appear that much in Greek myths, but that doesn't mean Hypnos isn't important, because he is. That's a high-level view of Hypnos, but let's begin to really talk about this subject more as I ask you, Joel, why does Hypnos resonate with you?
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, I really enjoy learning about Hypnos, and I'm really happy to be here, brother. The Toltec Dreaming Arts that I practice utilize the darkness as a means to learn to see energy. And they learn to enter the darkness as a means to transform their attention into their dreaming body. And it's a deep level of silence mixed with pure darkness that allows them to travel. And I think it's a secret. I think it's a tool that we can all discover, and it all will be revealed to us when we die. And I think the dreaming gates that can be opened are actually portals into other worlds. And the myths that we have been given are pointing at this and trying to help us understand our power and remind us of what we're capable of when silence, darkness, sleep, and death are interacted with in a magical way. Because there's a lot of fear around these concepts, but I think they're very liberating. And we don't need to fear the dark. Darkness is yin, darkness is feminine, the womb. Our ability to go back into the womb is actual through the 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏 process, the purification, and to be able to remember being in the womb is one of the goals of the Toltecs. To remember being conceived, to go back and have access to your parents' memories. I'm just scratching the surface of this work, but I know that it's infinite by the teachers that I've worked with and seen their development. So I believe that our ability to come out of hypnosis is more critical than ever. And so we need to understand hypnosis, and especially mass formation hypnosis. As people continue to buy into narratives that are misleading, we're in a time where we can study hypnosis on a deep level just by observing humanity.
Many of the guests that I have had on this show have walked into the Myth Slayer Café, sat down, and answered the question about why this or that mythical figure resonates with them with a lot of substance that itself requires some unpacking to even begin to dive into the deep end of the pool. Yo, Joel, I think you've got them all beat.
Appreciate it.
So let me just start with the basics here. I'm going to assume that there are people watching this episode who are curious, who are open-minded, who are intrigued by everything that you've said, but they may not understand all of the terminology. So let's start there. Toltec, that is one of those words I'm sure a lot of people have heard. They think they maybe know what it is, but maybe they don't. So can you explain a little bit about what Toltec means and how that relates to dreaming arts, in particular, the dreaming arts that you are an expert in?
Thank you. Yeah. So the Toltecs, it's a name given to you, or that you, when you learn certain or master certain dreaming discoveries. And so that it's not just like a lineage that's based on your genetics. It's actually an honorary term given to a person who's learned how to work with dreams in ways that are beyond the typical syntax. And so it has to do with coming out of the limitation of perception and learning to travel in your dreams and to witness other worlds and realize that they're actually real. And so it comes from ancient Mexico, and the Toltecs practice very strange movements as a means to reach states of awareness, similar to 𝗙𝗵𝗄 or Qigong, but they're very, very different in that their goal is to reach lucid dreaming consciousness. It unlocks secrets within your being when you do these movements. And so the Toltecs are very disciplined. They learn to save their sexual energy to use it for dreams, and they learn how to recapitulate all of their memories. And so they practice these movements that lead to being able to practice life review in a way that allows you to do your own soul retrieval work on yourself. And once you've done that, you get really light and you start learning about these dreaming gates. And dreaming gates are similar to like in the movie Inception, except there's no drugs involved, where you learn to go into one dream and then fall asleep in that dream and go into a deeper dream and then fall asleep in that dream and go into a deeper dream. And if you can get 3 or 4 gates in, you'll be in a world that's more real than this one, according to the Toltecs. The reason I got into this was from the famous author Carlos Castaneda, and he wrote a series of books about the Toltec Dreaming Arts. And I've been a student of many shamans who utilize that material as part of their way in which they trained me. So it's a very infinite discussion to get into, but the Castaneda and the Toltec world are a very powerful system.
Hypnos as the child of night and darkness, who nonetheless embraces every mortal in Greek myths, is symbolically, among other things, acting as the bridge between the day-to-day mortal existence and the most primal experiences of all. When I say that night and darkness were primordial, they predated not only the Olympians, they predated the Olympians' parents and the Olympians' grandparents. They literally were part of the original stew from which, according to the ancient Greeks, the world arose. Nonetheless, the ancient Greeks, at least, had as their mythical lens a focus on the inner relationship between gods as manifestation of inner human forces, of cultural capabilities, of as expressions of the higher self in the day-to-day life. The Toltecs, as you just described them and their practice, encourage, as I'm understanding it, and thank you for sharing that Inception allegory, going deeper and deeper and deeper into these dream spaces to explore what's realer than real, which presumably, even in the Greek mythos, would have been realer than real, the most primordial states. But why would anyone do that? So what? I am random Jane or Joe Doe walking down the street. I just want a new apartment and a paycheck. Why do I want to even know more about my dreams? Half the time my dreams don't make sense or they're scary.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that our dreams, because we're unconscious in them and we think we're in this dream, when we're in them, we miss out on so many opportunities to learn about what we are, and that we have a dreaming body, an astral body. And we've been put under hypnosis to perceive that this world that we see is all that there is. And it's a beautiful world, but if you could get another reference point and realize there are other worlds just as real as this one, but they're totally different worlds that we can go to, then you'll realize, oh, we are travelers of perception and we're not meant to stay in one place. So the Toltecs say we've been tricked and we've been put in an eddy, like when a river gets caught and the water just keeps getting, and we're like, we something intervened upon us and has lent us its mind, and we think those are our thoughts. And so we create a limited perspective of what's possible. This is a way of coming out of that limitation and discovering the moreness, and the relationship that develops as you have encounters with eternity. Time stops. You become so silent that all of your emotions move through you. You're able to heal yourself in that deeper, deeper drop of focused darkness, and incredible healings occur. And then you learn how to travel and see other dimensions and other realities. And it just activates your entire being, and you become fascinated and you fall in love with your existence on such a deeper level than just, having the trophy wife and the mansion and all the things that people think is the richness of life. The richness is actually the rekindling of your soul. It has nothing to do with anything but your ability to not put yourself above or below anyone, and realize that we're all one, we're all connected, but we get in these contracted states of comparison. So the Toltecs seek to shatter the mirror of self-reflection and fall in love with what they're looking at. And the Earth Mother will reveal her beauty to you the quieter you get. And so our ability to move into the Earth Mother's matrix, she has many layers to her onion, and she wants to show us her other worlds and communicate with us. And our ability to utilize dreams and take common dreaming and turn it into magical dreams, that's where the consciousness kicks in, and then you get to live 24 hours a day. You don't go to sleep. You stay awake while dreaming at the same time, and then everything changes.
So I want to make sure I understand this correctly. Because if I'm taken aback, I'm sure at least one other person watching this is going to be taken aback. Are you saying that if you become skilled enough in the Toltec dreaming practices, when you go to sleep, you're not actually, from a perception perspective, sleeping? You are actually conscious and experiencing your dreams as if they are day-to-day experiences that you are engaging with in the quote-unquote real world. So you are literally conscious all the time, if you so choose.
Yeah, you still get just as much rest and repair because your perception has moved to the same place that it normally does when you're sleeping, but you've remained conscious. You realize you're dreaming, and you're using your conscious awareness to solve almost like riddles that are being presented, and you learn to graduate from certain deceptions that are happening in the dreams. You realize you're actually interacting with interdimensional beings when you go to sleep, and they're offering you invitations to come into their world. And if you learn to control your dreams long enough, you can ask them to take you to their world, and they will take you through a wormhole, a tunnel, and you will arrive at this place where these beings who have lived for millions of years, who have studied dreams and us and have been observing us, they will tell you everything you to your heart's desire, but they're doing it as a means to hopefully ensnare you in their world. And so you have to be very careful. This is a predatory realm. We're not the highest person on the food chain. We have to realize that we're dealing with something that's interfering with us as well as gatekeeping us. And so this is very disturbing, but very liberating to realize, because we end up being at odds with people in this world, but we're really dealing with a predator that's outmaneuvered us. And it's not personal, it's just seeking food, and we our emotions and fears and hopes and stuff are food for these forces. So we learn to get detached and neutral and become aware. And that's where real leadership is born, is that you stop letting anyone else's version of reality interfere with what you as an individual have come to be able to face and look at. And it's very empowering.
There are people that are watching this who are like portals to other dimensions, interdimensional beings. All of it we're being deceived, and they're going to say, "This is there's loopy,
Yes.
and then there's this." And
Yes.
Scott has brought into the Myth Slayer Cafe someone who is profoundly interesting and well spoken. All this, but this is pushing the boundaries over the edge. Did you always believe this? Like, why? How did you even come to be this person that talk? Like, were you like this when you were 7 years old, or was there evolution for you to get where you are? Because there has to be an origin story here to explain this. This is, yeah. I just have to ask to keep it real, homie.
Yeah, at 16 years old, I encountered the Carlos Castaneda material. It's so confronting, and what it suggests is actually going on, that most people would disregard it.
Mhm.
But some of us had experiences that validated the teachings, and then it just kept getting more and more validated. So this knowledge is protected. It's not meant for most people. So it doesn't matter how people perceive it. It doesn't affect me whatsoever. I'm completely liberated in that I'm able to think for myself, because I came out of that typical hypnosis, which you're sort of representing. You're defending the limited story by being, like, whoa, this sounds crazy. I don't want people to think I'm crazy, so I need to challenge you. And I get it. I'm not saying that you should open yourself to these ideas. I'm here to plant a seed for people that realize there's more to this story than we've been told. And in fact, this whole thing is theater. We're caught in what we call a phantom world, and we are phantoms in that phantom world until a massive transformation happens to each one of us, in which we are no longer under the hypnosis. The problem is, people that come out of the typical hypnosis usually lose their marbles and end up in a mental ward. So this is a dangerous game to become aware and conscious of what's really going on. And especially if you have wounds, fears, shadow stuff that's undealt with, then you'll get caught in these black rabbit holes of information that are very concerning and hijack your attention, right? And so this place is kind of designed as a means to make sure people do not exit the theater. The Toltec knowledge teaches you how to do that, and then your life gets really long because you're no longer caught in the rhythm and the TikTok linear storyline, and your day becomes infinite. When you learn to do dreaming, you have experiences that are like lifetimes that only last a few minutes in your linear world. So everything gets very passionate and powerful. And so it's not meant for most people, but for those that it is meant to, it is an incredible journey to go on to start to discover these things. But no scientist can validate them. They have to be experienced on your own, and that's what protects it.
Why are we in this theater? Why?
Our ability to become self-aware is to know oneself. And so, kind of like Westworld, the TV show, what do people get into when they enter Westworld? Some of them go off and start doing the things they couldn't do in the other world. But some people kind of keep their purification. They're aware that everything's a test. There is an afterlife, according to the Toltecs. We're here to save our energy, as a means to enter that afterlife consciously without having to recycle and do it again. This is an obstacle course, a place of ultimate distraction. And it's actually a really enjoyable realm to interact with, unless you're attached to outcome. If you can remain detached, then you can have the time of your life. And Carlos Castaneda said, after all the worlds he went in and out of, he said, there's nothing like being present here in this dream. And so it's just a matter of the perspective shift that needs to happen so that you stop taking your life for granted. You use death as an advisor. And if you think things are difficult, you turn to your death and it will tell you, this is nothing. I have yet to touch you. Life is the arena and death is the player. And we are being hunted, but we have to become the hunter. We have to hunt power through dreams if we don't want to become food for these loose forces that are manipulating people by hijacking their perception, and then they're the ones that run the theater. So like in the movie The Matrix, you're dealing with a non-human force. It may look like humans that are destroying things, but it's not. They're just under the influence of forces that are much higher on the food chain.
If I'm someone that hears this, or that never hears anything about the Toltecs at all, and I'm just sort of living my life caught in the hamster wheel of acquisition, or just having fun, or maybe a sadder hamster wheel of disconnection and alienation or apathy, but not really motivated to do anything about it because it's okay. Is there any harm that we experience having gone through the theater of this existence that way?
Well, I mean, we all have a longing, and we have to get honest with that longing. And it usually doesn't happen until we've gotten really old. And then we sense that we missed out. And we want to feel that now instead of wait till we get old and get to know what is the mysterious side of our being that we have yet to unlock. Because this is why things get difficult as we get old. We didn't save our youthful energy. We spent it. Toltecs figure out a way to get that energy back and to erase their past so that they can live in the now. And there's this magical art of recapitulating that they practice where you breathe in your essence from each memory that you can remember. Your memories are going to flash before your eyes when you die, and you'll have a moment with eternity. I'm inviting people to have that moment with eternity now instead of waiting. Your life is your life, and if you're enjoying it and you're being honest about that, you're actually content, that's amazing. This is an incredible experience. Life is a miracle. The fact we exist is a miracle. It's more than we could ask for. But to come out of hypnosis and to discover how even more incredible it is, I think every person longs for that. They're just denying themselves the honesty of that longing and trying to convince themselves that they're content. And I just try to help people to get honest with themselves and others so that they can feel their sadness and then get to know their wounding from childhood and then work through that stuff so that they can get more passionate about their existence. And then that leads to becoming curious. Curiosity killed the cat, but I think it's more dangerous to remain unaware than it is to move towards awareness, as far as how fulfilled you'll feel if you walk toward the thing you're afraid of rather than remain domesticated.
Joel, I spent much of my life feeling no particular longing at all.
Yeah.
And being skeptical of those that felt they had any sort of longing outside of the longing for things that were purely the top gifts that a purely materialistic or material-based society would be able to provide: status, stature, money, power, authority, nice clothes, all of these sorts of things. That being said, around 2019, a different sort of longing began to emerge within me. I didn't particularly ask for that longing. I didn't particularly want it. And as it began to pull me, I was many times, as much as I was driven by it or pushed to explore it, irritated that this longing had emerged within me and not so many other people around me. And I had moved more and more into exploring these areas, but then something happened that longtime viewers of this show will know about, but I'll have to recap here because you need to know about it as well. This thing was a mysterious illness that I got in 2023. And this illness began with a series of painful symptoms that escalated over a period of about 10 days. And as the symptoms escalated, new ones would pile on the prior ones. And one set of these newer symptoms as the illness progressed was this intense, deep need to sleep all the time, 16, 20 hours a day. After one of these 20-hour sleep periods, I woke up having just had a dream unlike any that I have ever had before or since. This dream, I always say, I remember as though it really happened. I know the difference between the quote-unquote real world and the dream world. I know that what I experienced in this dream could not conceivably occur in our physical reality. And yet, as it was happening, it was not like any dream that I had ever experienced previously. It was real. And right now, even as I think about it, it was as real as the portion of this conversation we had 15 seconds ago. This dream had me walking through mansions that had bookcases, but the bookcases were full of baseball cards. Every baseball card I would pull out had in big bold letters the words, "Your number's up," and above it, my headshot. I woke up. I was unable to walk or even stand and rushed to the hospital where this terrible illness that ended up changing my life and that, by the way, never had any explanation, went through its course. When you say that the dream world can be realer than real, I have to say, I would never have been able to conceive of what that was like had it not been for that dream. By the way, my number was up, and the person, I've said it over and over again, that left that hospital room is not the same one that went in at all. I wonder why that dream came to me, because I certainly didn't feel ready for it. And some people may wonder, am I ready for the sorts of dreams that Joel is talking about? Will life force readiness on me, as it did in my personal case? How do I know if I'm ready? I'm scared even hearing what Joel has to say. Like that character Cypher in the movies The Matrix. It's kind of frightening to even think of existing in a world that's real and may have elements I don't like, when I could just be living in a fake world that has steak and wine.
Wow, thank you. Powerful share, man. Thank you for congratulations on what we would call a shamanic death. And not everyone is here to have shamanic death, you know, but those of us that do are spared. We're being worked with. We have enough personal power to handle it. Everything that happens to us is for us, not to us. We just don't always realize that. And if we did, then we could change what happens to us. It's that victim consciousness that keeps those things reoccurring. What we call self-pity, self-importance. They're the same thing. You have to reach the place of no pity, where you stop feeling sorry for yourself or anyone else. And that's not an easy thing to do. But there's 4 enemies of man, according to the Toltecs: fear, clarity, power, and old age. And fear is the first enemy, and it's the most difficult one. And most people don't move beyond it. But the secret is that the fear that you're experiencing is not yours. It's the program running. It's trying to keep you from moving beyond it. And it's just the base program. And so we have 2 minds. We have our natural mind, which is soft and guiding us in a beautiful way and telling us beautiful things about this place and helping us access our intuition. And then there's this hard voice, and it's got a lot of fear, and it's afraid of being discovered. Toltecs learned to silence that voice. They vanquish their mind. They realize that their mind is not natural. It's a foreign installation. And so you were cleansed in that process, and all illness is associated with unresolved emotions, no matter what ends up happening or what diagnosis they give or don't give. Everything is energetic at its root. Root cause issues have to do with unresolved emotional wounds. And some of them are pre-verbal, and we don't remember what happened to us. We don't know what we're carrying, what kind of trauma got stored in our body. So we're all being worked with. The earth and the sun are trying to lend us the energy to help us resolve this. But most people are caught in pseudoscience and religion. They think the explanations of the scientists and the religious people are accurate, but it couldn't be further from the truth. People are insane, and they're pretending to be intelligent, and they're basing their information off of ignorance and arrogance. Shamans have been trying to tell people how things really work for a long time, and someday that they're going to be validated, because we're going in the wrong direction as far as the information we're telling people about how things work. And so this is one step closer to being able to take that leap and move into independent perception instead of group hive mind mass formation psychosis.
The person that existed before experiencing that dream, I and those closest to me know really is gone.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking metaphorically when I say a part of me died after that dream and never came back, and during that illness. When you talk about stepping out of what we thought we were and the world that we're living in, stepping into clarity, going deeper and deeper and deeper into dreams, having a life review, and literally stepping outside of what you perceived to be the entirety of your existence and seeing it from a third-party perspective. There has to be, as I experienced, some sort of severance of the larger consciousness with the person. How can someone deal with that? How do people accept it? It just seems to me, based on my own experience, but even thinking about it theoretically, almost more than the human mind or spirit can bear. Or maybe is it revelatory? And if so, like, how would you not grieve over the person that you were? Because you can never be the same after going through what you've talked about, can you?
Yeah, no, the grief is so important. We do want to we want to honor our human mess and our fear and respect what stage we're at, and really not spiritually bypass anything. And that's the whole point of this work. And the things that people survive seem impossible. They don't know how they got through it, things like what you went through. But that's just a testament to how powerful we are. And so we are actually we're indestructible. Our souls are eternal and indestructible. We actually have nothing to be afraid of. If we could realize that, we would become fearless and use this life in a very, very meaningful way. And so that's the goal, because attachment to outcome is fear. So detachment doesn't mean that you're cold and you don't cry. In fact, you're more moved and moved to tears more easily, and you become more and more sensitive to everyone's pain. But you see the richness in their trauma. You don't judge them. You stop putting yourself above or below anyone. A king or a beggar have the same potential of reaching eternity. There's no advantage one way or the other. It depends on the personal power and how much you trust in it. So there is a limitation of possibilities. We are in a contract. We can only do so much within each lifetime, but we can make the most of each lifetime. And these aren't past and future lives. These are parallel lives. They're all happening at the same time, because things aren't linear. The linear is the construct that we're inside of. Toltecs break themselves out of the linear construct, and they say that they went into hell and they came out with trophies. The linear, the tick tock, there's something that intervened with one of our energy gates, and it's making us interact with this world in a linear way that's not natural. So we're actually inside of a memory. We don't really understand any of what's going on, but you can become lucid enough to interact with these concepts that unbind you from the linear. And so again, everything that happened to you was for you. It was exactly in alignment with your capacity. And it's just a matter of properly grieving and mourning what was, so that you can be conscious of now what you're being offered. And if you tried to skip that step, that would be, it wouldn't work. You would end up having to feel those feelings. They're all trapped inside of us until they're liberated.
Joel, I can't help but feel the need to dive a little bit more deeply into your discussion about separation from outcome and expectations around it. This is an area of my own spiritual practice that I have been focusing on for the past probably 6 or 7 months. One of the things that I'm finding surprising about it, and I can't even help but smile as I think about it, is how unbelievably liberating the freedom from expectations and outcomes are. They really are a burden. And it's a burden I didn't even realize was possible, because you just sort of carry around, or that's just the way, especially in the business world or in leadership positions, right? Outcomes are everything. What are the metrics that you performed by? What were your margins? What is the outcome vis-a-vis your attempt to grow your market share? All of this sort of language, freeing myself from it. It's just been, it's felt like Atlas throwing off the stone. How and why is that?
Beautiful. Congratulations, man. It's we carry the weight of the world around with
Oh,
us. And
it's ridiculous. Yeah. But you don't realize you're ridiculous. I didn't realize how ridiculous it was until it began to go away. Then I'm like, oh my God, Scott, you idiot.
We're comfortable in what is known, and our suffering is familiar. And so it takes great courage to become free, because it's unfamiliar. It's uncharted territory. And we're like the black sheep of our family, because we're breaking out of those patterns that were passed on to us.
Yeah.
So our ancestors are supporting us in that process, because it heals the lineage. So you're not alone doing this work. That's why you were able to navigate the intensity of what you went through, is that you were being supported. And it's just about learning to receive that support and interact with those guides and say thank you, and move into deeper and deeper levels of gratitude. And it leads to even more healing. There's even more healing to come for both you and I. And it's about being open to how that might happen. So I help people, instead of manifest, to listen. There's great service for you to do here, and to be of service is the greatest gift that you can have assigned to you. And we're all here to be of service in one way or another. You don't have to be out there as a leader necessarily. You might be guided just to go deep and stay private and do some inner work. But the 100th monkey thing is real. Each one of us that liberates and removes that baggage and that weight that we've been carrying around unconsciously is giving permission to everyone else to do the same.
I feel that's so important what you just said. Everyone's path is different, and that doesn't make one better or worse. I love being out there. I'm extremely extroverted. I love speaking. I love being in front of people. I love all of the things that are associated with that. And that's not, by the way, a quality that I developed or even chose. That was a quality that I was given. And so I choose to run with it. But there's nothing better or worse about that than anyone else. And that can be a hard thing for people to hear. They may feel that, oh, unless I'm out there impacting 10 trillion people, I'm wasting my whole life. When really, there's people out there that are impacting 10 trillion people who are hurting the world, or who are wasting their lives because, well, I shouldn't be so judgmental, who are not doing everything that's possible because they're not serving anyone except themselves. They're never getting to experience that joy that I also have come to see with what you're talking about when you say, I'm here purely to serve.
Yeah, this exactly, man. The Toltecs say that this is a world of terror and beauty, but the beauty balances the terror. And so we do have to come to terms with the disturbing nature of the way things are playing out with energies, and the way how many people are caught in their hungry ghost, and they're trying to fill that emptiness. And humanity is run through its genitals. Basically, we're so focused on getting our sexual needs met, and the frustrations, the repressions, the abuse of that energy. There is a beautiful way to be with our power, and it's not easy to get to that place. But our relationship with our chi, our capacity to be able to remember and focus, has to do with reclaiming that energy and realizing how sacred it is, and being very caring for ourselves. And that's the self-care practices that lead to a lot of vitality. And so it's personal for each person on how they get to that place where they feel more alive than ever.
You said something that I interpreted as having words behind it that I wanted to just point out.
Yeah.
And if I am putting more into what you said than what you really did, by all means, correct me, Joel. You used the words like sexual drive or libido. And it's interesting, on another video that I'm editing right now, the word libidinous came up, sort of describing not just sexual energies, but energies or ways of being that, to my heart at least, come from the same space of the libido, the desire to sexualize beauty, for instance, or the desire to sexualize oneself, or to divert libidinous urges into other sorts of sexual like conquests or submissions. And so I wanted to ponder that, and for you to think about it as I move on to something else that may or may not be related, but my gut is saying it might be related. When you talk about the dream states that the Toltec work puts you in, is it really a psychedelic space?
Yeah. So Toltecs discovered all of this knowledge through power plants like mushrooms. And then they realized that if they were relying on those plants to get them to these states, that they would become dependent and it would not be ideal. So they found ways to get there without the plants. So the plants are just delivering you to a place that exists with or without the plants. It's just that we don't usually have enough sexual energy saved up, or we don't know how to take care of our sexual energy enough to make those jumps without having to take the mushrooms. So sexual energy and dreaming energy are one and the same.
Really?
Yep. Yep. And so that's the freedom that we have, is that we do have the ability to save this fuel and learn how to use it to take off into other worlds through dreams. It doesn't mean you can't have an incredible sex life or something, but it does have to do with how you were conceived. Some people do have to be celibate for a period of time in order to heal the fact that they were a product of a bored fuck, is what they call it. And so if it was a really exciting, powerful, both parents had an orgasm when you were conceived, you're going to have a ton of energy. And getting to know how you were conceived, if possible, can be really helpful to understand what is going on with your energy levels.
I'm stunned. I have never heard such a thing in my life before. That being said, I will never know about how I was conceived, for instance, because I'm adopted and there are no records of my biological parents. However, I do know that they had an affair and neither of them were married, and out came me, so presumably there was some real passion going on there.
Yeah.
And maybe that explains why everyone accuses me of being so overly energetic. I'll take that as a compliment. But yeah, you know, maybe, yeah, it was duty sex sometimes, and then people came out and they're like overly low key. Wow. Okay. So it's hard to get me to stumble over my words, but you just did it to me, Mr. Schafer. So let me move on to the related topic. This whole show is about the mythical. We've talked about Hypnos, and then you mentioned that, more or less, as I understood it, that the realm of these dreams within the dreams, as you go deeper and deeper into them, you are tapping into the realm of the mythical. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, we are in a mysterious realm, and we are magical, mysterious creatures, and we do not know or understand anything at all. Our ability to remain in that mysterious state of perception would allow us to unbind from the mind. And so the psychedelic world is how you heal. The creator is psychedelic. You are an extension of the creator and the designer. And that designer is incomprehensibly beautiful in its expression. And the closer you get to that beauty, you start having conversations with the designer. You become trained to become a designer yourself. We're not meant to just live and die. We're here to realize that we are not separate from source. And that's just the most beautiful thing that can be discovered. But materialism keeps the majority of people from realizing that.
Although this show focuses on Greek myths, by talking about these experiences within a larger and perhaps more, words kind of escape me, but I'll just say mega deep framework. I'm also hearing, both in your description of the Toltec belief system and the fact that we're talking about the Toltecs on a show about Greek myths, that there is something cross-cultural, universal within humanity that is foundational to the mythical ethos or the mythical being. And interestingly enough, there's a guest on the show named Jason Batt who posited, for a number of different reasons that may or may not overlap with yours, you'll have to watch this episode, it's right up here over my shoulder, to get more information about it. But he even talked about mythical realms and mythos within alien societies. He's a futurist and he has a background in space. And so we're also tapping our fingers into places like Jung's collective unconsciousness. Am I correct in then pulling all of this together based on what you just said, which is that if there is a universal source that is psychedelic, that is creative, infinite in its beauty, in its wisdom, in its tendrils, in its expansiveness, all these sorts of things in its depth. We come from that. Myths and the dream world are tapping into that space. We're really, when we talk about myths generally, stepping through just what might seem to many as a step into old stories, really diving into a pool that goes even beneath the human subconscious, but goes us to the foundational nature of the universe itself. That's sort of the implication going a few steps back from everything that you've been sharing with me so far.
Yeah, the Toltecs refer to this path as a living myth. That we bring the myth to the realm. We allow the myth to become alive, and the 𝗘-𝗕ause books reveal a very powerful secret about the nature of groups and the power of groups, and that there is a way to align and make use of these myths and remember them so completely that you embody them and use them as a platform to free yourself. I think a lot of the religions and stories serve as a means to keep people hypnotized, but the people that were hired to create those religions were mystics, and they provided secrets on how to free yourself within the structure that was designed to hijack us. And so the forces always rise to meet each other, and our ability to find things that are alive, like the 𝗘-𝗕cie books are alive. You can read them over and over, and they will give you things that you've never read before because you weren't ready for them. It's protected knowledge, and therefore the decoding of your existence unbinds you from the structure. But you wouldn't want to do that recklessly because you would end up with having lost your marbles. We want to go very slow and steady. The 𝗘-𝗕cie books are a manual on how to carefully free yourself from this phantom world, not to escape it, but to enter it deeper, to become one with it, and fall in love with your existence in the process.
Let's talk about what I call the cool shit. The stuff that I always have to talk about, that's catnip to the Myth Slayer, and I blame you for throwing that catnip out to me. I blame you. I don't want to take responsibility for my actions right now. I know I am. I take responsibility for my actions. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Yeah.
These beings, what are these beings? Are they from the same source that we are? Are they connected with us in any way? If they're adversarial and using us as food, were we set up by source literally to be victims unless we fight? Talk to me a little bit more about what's going on there.
Yeah, we share this world with many, many, many beings that are not physical, that are observing us, and you can learn to see them, as I have. It's quite uncomfortable and intense, and if you were to tell the wrong person, they would lock you up for it, potentially. So it's not something to necessarily go around telling everyone.
Yeah.
It's rather wild, but you can learn to see the entities of the night when you go out in the wilderness and you don't have many shields. So if you were to take a large enough amount of mushrooms and be in a deep wilderness situation in the mountains, you would realize you're being observed and you would hear sounds. We're not alone. There are ancient civilizations interacting in different layers of the onion. All kinds of strange things exist here. And then the people that are supposedly telling us the truth are also misinformation. They're controlled in a lot of ways. So we're witnessing sort of a very strange time. And when people are coming out of hypnosis, there's all these false stories to fall into that are just alternative hijacks, essentially. So our ability to just, become discerning so that we're not getting misled and we're learning to come to terms with it. But through these dreaming interactions, you can face these beings. They are an extension of source. It's similar to us being higher on the food chain than the foods that we eat. We're not evil because we eat food. These beings are not evil because they eat food. They just seek food differently than we do. They seek our emotions. We look to them like these really beautiful, bright balls of light because they dull their light out over millions of years. and we run our light really quickly through a very short time period. And so we are very attractive because of it. Just like seeing a beautiful woman that's full of energy, that's just in love with life. There's nothing more beautiful than these creatures that we are. When you really allow yourself to be honest, we're an extension of the light in my eyes is the light that comes from the sun, and our ability to become luminous and bright, is what makes it possible to then handle the intensity of interacting with these beings without getting overwhelmed or scared. If you notice schizophrenic people on the street, they'll be walking along and something's tugging on the back of their shirt and they keep reaching back. They're dealing with something that has access to them that we can't see, but they can. So shamans are functional schizophrenics. They learn how to see what the crazy ones see without getting overwhelmed by it. So the people that are diagnosing mentally ill people in hospitals, they're less connected than the ones they're diagnosing. They have no idea how this place operates, and they're drugging these people rather than trying to help them.
The implications of that are startling and frightening. But I have to say, what is perhaps most startling or frightening of all is the idea that you've posited that we are not the highest on the food chain, because at least within the material world within which we operate, within which our senses have perceptive powers, we are the top of the food chain. Nothing eats a human. Now, there may have been a few animals in prehistory that ate humans, but
Right.
we don't know about them because they're dead, or they've been reduced to near extinct status and they only eat us if there's nothing else to eat, and or they've never encountered a human before. But as a general matter, there's no species on this planet that goes around just hunting and killing and eating people to our knowledge. So imagining ourselves sliding down on the food chain, at least from a perceptual status, is something mind-blowing and humbling, which goes as to the whole relationship between humility and dreaming and lucid dreaming and experiencing all of these things. Do you find it to be, as I'm surmising, a very humbling experience? And how do you keep that humbling from being able to completely overwhelm you so that you just become a passive, right? Like, geez, I'm nothing, let me just end it all right now sort of person.
We all have our emotional wounds, and if we lie to ourselves and don't admit to the pain that's deep down, then we'll get cocky and push past that humbleness, because everything that happened to us is to balance our being so that we can handle stepping into our power without getting lost in illusions of grandeur. Because the predator that's intervening on us, if we come out of victimhood, it's going to try to make you think you're special. It's going to try to turn you into a cult leader. It's going to try to use you in a new way. You've adjusted the program. You came out of victimhood. Now you're going to be a victor. Nobody seems to be able to stay in that neutrality. And so it's a really difficult thing to be mature and sober enough to recognize when you start to move into victorious ideas, because now you're not a victim. The forces try to control you by making you enter thoughts into your field that can hijack you and then affect a bunch of people in the process. And so it's really, really tricky. And I want to add that it's interesting what's going on. Yeah, they're not hunting us and killing us and eating us physically. They're keeping us alive and feeding off of us slowly.
Wow. Well, although the reaction that I just had almost certainly speaks for itself, I must say, thinking about the way in which the world at a macro level moves, it's not completely surprising. One of the things that happened by the time I had gone through this illness that I told you about, as well as a lot of work
Yeah.
with a spiritual guide, as well as doing internal work that has intensified over time, has been perceiving the larger, especially political world, but also the economic world too, the business world, all of this sort of stuff through a very, very different lens. And maybe that begins to take us back to one of the other foundational themes of this show, which is leadership. I used to get very frustrated at the fact that the world seems to overly reward people. Sometimes it doesn't, but it seems to overly reward people who are hyper shallow or who are political or business or religious versions of cult leaders. Heaven knows there's enough of them out there right now. And seeing the destruction and the division that they cause with people, seeing how it leads to wars, seeing how it leads to exhaustion and emptiness. Yet, also, by the time I had gotten to a certain point in my development after these spiritual experiences, it's almost like I began to see all of this as people who are like, they think that they're fully actualized humans. But again, this is purely metaphor. They're like a bunch of rats with rabies caught in a high-walled sandbox, just fighting away at each other over what? Over rat food? Right? Over the biggest place where they could put their shit, over all this other stuff. And a beautiful thing I found is that I can care so much less in terms of really thinking about, well, how does this impact my life?
Yeah. I mean, our focus on the details of what's going on here can very much keep us from discovering how to become lucid, right? So Toltecs say most people spend their lives being offended by one thing or another.
Yeah, I've spent too much of my life being offended by silliness. Go ahead.
Yeah. So when we free ourselves from being offended, then we start becoming fascinated with the details of the theater, and we're not at odds with it. And we recognize that, our ability to unbind from attachment to outcome around the collective, because this place is not designed for the majority of humanity to wake up. This place is very selective. So the majority of people serve as a buffer for people like you and I and others who are discovering the secrets of this realm. And that way, the forces that are feeding off of humanity will leave us alone because they got plenty of other people to feed off. So you and I can discipline ourselves enough that these forces no longer find our energy palatable. We've disciplined ourselves to the degree that they cannot feed off of us whatsoever. And then we get to keep that energy moving forward and be in the presence of, everyone else and become lighthouses. And then enough certain people who see it will reach out and say, well, what did you do? What is
Yeah.
different about you? Why are you not so stressed out? But Toltecs actually go into stressful situations once they've healed as a means to not be stressed in what typically would be stressful situations. So it's a transformation. You could go back to the things that used to drain you and no longer would they phase you once you understand energy management.
I'm surprised, but as I've dived deeper and deeper into my own spiritual practices, which are aligned with these, although not these exact ones, although I plan on exploring them a lot more after this conversation, the stress management has gotten better, and other people in my life have noted that in my behaviors. That's fascinating. If there is a single takeaway that I can pull from what has been like a spiral galaxy worth of star-sized informational nuggets that you've put out there, I would say that what's resonating with me the most right now is that there is a possibility to view something much closer to what really exists than what we are perceptually experiencing. One of the best books I've ever read is one called The Case Against Reality, I think is the name of it, which from a scientific perspective argues that our senses limit our ability to perceive reality because it would be so overwhelming that if we didn't have those limitations, we would go extinct. And what you're talking about is a method for actually breaking through that. We're not in the same place as a species as we were when we evolved before our current senses, before civilization emerged. And understanding then what we're capable of doing, being, and becoming by accessing these worlds is something that I simply personally feel a call to move forward with, and am profoundly grateful to have had this exposure to. If there is one thing that you would like the audience to leave with that you either haven't had a chance to express so far, or that you would like to reiterate, or both, what might it be?
Thank you, brother. So the Toltecs say that if we do not remember the secret of our perception, we will perish. So we are up against a wall here. We need to remember our magic and medicine. And these forces that have been feeding off of humanity, they weren't always here.
Oh, really?
They're they arrived here, right? So it's just remembering. It's within us. Some part of us knows that we are infinite in our potential. And civilization, we were nomadic and wild and liberated. We didn't need cities and villages at these times. So it's actually that's what caused us to start behaving that way. We became domesticated. So all I recommend is that you start rewilding in whatever way you feel called. That doesn't mean you need to go build a cabin in the woods by yourself and live out in nature alone. You can rewild from your cubicle. I rewilded by listening to music that liberated me while I was in my little cubicle. One ear had a headphone and the other one was paying attention. Everything became psychedelic even though I was in a cubicle.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to escape the matrix in order to liberate yourself, but it sure helps. And when you give yourself permission to get out in the ocean and let that water take the weight of the world off of you, or snowboarding on mushrooms, or whatever does it for you, give yourself permission to have ecstatic experiences, because joy is what heals us. But in order to feel our joy, we have to also feel the sadness and pain that we haven't faced. Otherwise, we won't be able to be in touch with our feelings. So with being able to feel more comes all kinds of strong emotions. Our ability to navigate those emotions is where we get to know ourselves.
Normally, I don't add a single takeaway to add onto the first takeaway that I had. But in this case, I'm going to break the rules, go beyond the matrix, and say that what you just shared has me completely rethinking the word domestic and domesticated. I won't say any more. Joel, how can people find out more about you? Where
Yeah.
can they go? What do you have going on? This is amazing, and I will not let you off this screen without sharing that information.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it, Scott. Amazing talk, amazing chat here at the cafe. And I have a website called joelschafer.com, and you can sign up for my courses. We just started an online course called Windows and Mirrors. Such incredible people in there. Some people more advanced than I am, but they honor me by taking my classes. So it's a whole network of magical people. We meet in person 3 times a year in Montana for in-person workshops, and I do one-on-one 90-minute sessions as a mentor, and I help people to get really honest with themselves, and I get to know your story, and I help in a variety of ways. As someone who serves as a mirror, I can help you see things about yourself that you may have not been able to see yet. And I work with women that help me in the same capacity. I recommend we all show up as beginners and be willing to unlearn and learn in all the ways. And that's what keeps things fresh. But I offer an opportunity for people to heal Through emotional release, I guide people in recapitulation, help them go back into memories, time travel into feelings that they forgot about. Because we have all these feelings that we experienced in our life that are no longer accessible. Toltecs seek to reestablish a link with all those feelings. And I'm a very feeling-based person. I've learned to get out of my mind and stay in my feelings more, so I can help guide people in discovering what I've discovered. I also have a channel called 𝗕𝗫𝗄𝗃 on YouTube. That's my biggest audience, and I'm on Instagram as Joel Schafer as well.
I follow you on both of these platforms, and it is quite a journey that you take me on every day simply by being there, showing up, and sharing what you have to share.
And for you too, brother, really appreciate you reaching out, and I love what you're doing with your channel. It's really cool.
Thank you. I love mutual fan clubs. They really are the best.
Yeah.
For those of you who enjoyed this episode, be sure to come back again. You can do that very easily by simply pressing that subscribe button right below, as well as making sure that you leave comments so that we can reach out to you, connect with you, and get your feedback so that the episodes that we bring can speak to your needs more and more and more and give you all of that love that you deserve. Don't hesitate to follow Joel on his other platforms. The links are directly below, as well as don't hesitate to follow me on my platforms either. Those are also contained in the links below. I want your future to be epic.